Jenn, welcome to Totally Fine. It is such a joy to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Christina.
I know it's serendipitous when we connected through Hey Mama, because I just, as soon as I started digging into the work that you do and just the messages that you share with communities about parenting, challenges, the beauty, the struggle, it's just like knowing where I am today with my family and my children, I was just glued to your messaging. So I was really grateful to have our conversation last week and to be able to now amplify it and just go a little deeper. So thank you. Thank you for making the time.
I'm glad to be here.
So as I just mentioned to you before you jumped on, I watched your mastermind that, in which you talked about how to work with deep feeling kids. And I feel I'd be shocked if every family didn't have one or just some semblance of that. And what I loved, because I've read about you, you share your mission and your philosophy beautifully on your website. But in that mastermind, you shared a bit about your story and how you got, how and why you started to do this work. And I would love, if you're comfortable, just kind of starting with that, because it just sets such a beautiful framework and foundation for what you're passing on to families and how you're equipping families to parent in the way that feels most authentic to them. So I don't know if I'd love to start there. Like, how do we get to Jenn Wert, the parent coach?
Yeah, it's been a journey. I'll go way back just briefly and share that I grew up in a big family, six kids, a big, very judgy family. And I felt almost like an orphan. I felt completely alone, which is a funny thing to say. It's not funny, it was sad, but true. And unusual, I think, right? There were a lot of people around, but I felt like I was on my own. I had an ambiguous attachment with my own mother. And nobody in my family understood me. I mean, that was just a fact that I had to grow up trying to understand, right? I never felt heard or seen. I would say things and family members would say, why do you talk like that? Or why do you ask questions like that? No one wants to think about that. Literally, they would say these things to me growing up. And to boot, I was a highly, highly sensitive child. I'm a highly sensitive adult. And when you're highly sensitive, you are for life. I know now the gift that is, and what that brings to me, but I did not know when I was little. So when I set off into the world in my late teens on my own, I was determined to figure out what family really meant. I felt really confused. And again, pretty alone. So I turned into sort of a sociologist, and I traveled and filled hundreds of journals with my observations of other families and other parents, and my questions filled them. They're still in my garage to this day.
Wow.
Lived in many different countries. I lived abroad, finished my BA in international studies, and I did my graduate work in education here in Colorado. I've taught elementary school for a long time. In all my years of teaching, to me, it was really about connection first and foremost. I mean, that social and emotional piece to me was what I focused on in my classroom every year, every time. I have students who are still in touch with me today, who are in their late 20s, their early 30s. Some of their parents are also still in touch with me. When I left the classroom, I then opened a for-profit business focused on women expressing themselves authentically. I was really passionate about my own learning how to do this and women supporting all women in doing this in their lives. I ran a few different nonprofits to do with education and empowering young families. Then I became a birth doula, attended over 100 births, preparing couples to bring a baby home, right? And through it all, I worked from the very same place: connection, values, communication, self-reflection, and basically well-being, emotional health. I took that awareness into my body. I have over 30 years of an Iyengar yoga practice, and I'm Indian certified as an instructor. This, of course, deepened my study of meditation and breath work, physiology, the nervous system, right? Ayurvedic health. My daughter the other day commented on her, this conversation is negatively affecting my nervous system. So I'm going to go to bed, Mama. We'll
Wow.
have it again tomorrow. It's like, wow. I guess I talk about the nervous system quite a bit. But all
Wow.
this time too, these decades of growing and as an adult, I was in deep work, analysis and therapy, to really heal what had gone on, unpack that and heal it, and figure out how to really adult, which is what you have to do when you parent, when you parent in a self-aware and humble way. And so I had a lot to learn. When I became a parent, I realized I had even more to learn, right? It just went even deeper
Yeah.
because there's a shift. Um, so I continued in my self-work in that way. I became a single parent. And during my daughter's toddler years, actually, she decided she was potty trained and then decided she wanted to go back to diapers. What felt like very suddenly to me. Um, this is when I found my own excellent parent coach who helped me to humbly realize so many things that I had yet to unpack and have a look at, right? That I was passing down to her unconsciously, and I didn't want to be. Even
Hmm.
after my decades of self work, there again was more to do and a different lens to look at it through. I was always wanting my girl to be happy, right? And safe and happy. And frankly, my daughter was pretty pissed off about this. She just she didn't buy it. She thought it was, she didn't like it. And I don't blame her, right? Because it's not really real.
It's like you're telling me what I need to be feeling. I could see that.
I just always wanted it to work out, right? So
Yeah.
I had a quick solution. I think a lot of parents do to any sort of distress, right?
Yeah.
Well, I see you're distressed and let's do this and this will make it better, right?
Hmm.
So my parent coach at that time, well, she's still my parent coach to this day, helped me to really see this. You know, why was I doing this? What did it have to do with my own childhood? Because we do flashback, right, to that time and how we were parented, whether we want to or not. So if we do want to do it the same, that's one thing. If we want to do it differently, we have to be aware of that as well. So through lots of mistakes and hard work, I really brought a self-awareness into my parenting that I still work on every single day. You know, getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. That's a really big one. Admitting my own inherited judgment from the
Hmm.
way I was raised and my biological family, and how I adored my daughter more than anything, anyone in the world, and yet I was judging,
Yeah.
right? So admitting that's a tough one. Until I found ways to allow her to be who she was and get the heck out of her way, right? And out of my own way, because that was all just resistance and everything's energy anyway. And so I was trying to choreograph, I'm very good at that. And it wasn't serving her, nor was it serving me. In any case, all of my career and life choices have been this ongoing study, if you will, and training in social and emotional intelligence. And as that term became more well known, I took postgraduate courses in it and official trainings in it, passage works, girls leadership, etc. I'm a huge believer in its significance because it really helps us remember how important it is to raise our kids holistically and that we're also whole, right? Our well being and consciousness plays a great part in our kids. So today, Christina, I oversee young teachers because I like to stay in education and support in that way. I still work as an educator myself with moms and daughters, little side passion project of mine. But most of my time is now spent supporting parents as a professional parent coach. Um, And as such, I really work with those who are invested in their growth, both as a human and as a parent. So I work with parents all over the world to bring more consciousness into their parenting, more authenticity into their ever evolving families, and balance into their lives. And I help them take a look at themselves in order to model what they want to teach and parent from those values, right? And whether that's, again, creating an entirely new way or slightly different from the way that they were raised.
Thank you so much for that background. It really struck me, and I'm so happy that you share that with the audience. And something that, which I got full body chills, by the way. I think I shared this with you when we last spoke, but I had long been in some form of therapy or, self-development pre-kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until it was probably after my son, my younger one, who's now 4. It was after he was born, I embarked on a real journey, and I started really challenging a lot of choices that I had made, a lot of lifestyle choices that I had been living. And I started undoing a lot of conditioning. And it's still a process. And I joke with people that I could gladly have stayed on Lexapro and drank the alcohol in life, like worked in tech and, stayed in the corporate realm. And that would have been fine. It was a beautiful life while it lasted, and it could have continued to be great. But somehow with my little kids, I knew that because I want them to remain as authentic and raw as possible, like resisting the conditioning for as long as they can, because in this world, it's inevitable. It's just degrees of conditioning that we assume. And I realized that if I want that for them, I have to do that. I have to be that. And in this same mastermind, and I'm going to link the mastermind in the show notes so that people can go in and just absorb the brilliance and just everything that you've shared. But something that really just hit something with me internally is you give the example of several examples of families or just archetypical situations, scenarios in which a child exhibits like deep emotions and the ways in which a parent may respond or react. And you also said, this is how we react, these are the risks that we take. And you included the child may grow up not trusting themselves. They think love is unconditional. Their social dynamics might be off. And when I read this, I have to say I felt validation, because sometimes I think, am I just making my life a lot harder by taking not the easy route and not I wasn't, negatively self-medicating, but I've been my children have been this intense catalyst for me to take a look at myself, take a look at the defaults with which I entered into parenthood, and question what I wanted to continue with and question what I wanted to shed. And it's an ongoing process, because we're constantly, to do that, you have to constantly reflect and be self-aware and understand, take a beat, think about, am I being triggered by the behavior? Can I lean into this with compassion and think about the meltdown that my daughter is currently giving me? I love when you share that, because it gave me I felt like a pat on the back, because I was like, okay, I'm not nuts. I'm not just using them as an excuse to do the work on myself. Because I believe firmly that this is I want them to see my flaws. I want them to see my processes. And what I almost glean from what you've shared is when we release and we show up authentically, it's almost like we're giving them permission to do exactly that.
Right. Exactly. Because all we really need to teach at the end of the day is teach our children how to listen to and trust themselves.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a big job.
It's crazy.
Because all we can do is model it. We are the role models. How well do you do that, parents? Right? I mean, it's a lifelong process and practice.
Yeah. It's intense, because I'm so grateful that we are in this day and age and in this sort of period of parenting or culture of parenting where this has become, there's an awareness around this, because it's certainly very different than I think many of us were raised. I love my parents. We have a great relationship. They did a great job, but I'm doing a very different job because I want different. I mean, I started to really get to know myself in my 40s. I don't want my kids to go, I don't want them to wait that long.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
And it's empowering because it's almost like when we remove all the, I don't want to call it bullshit, because the conditioning's there for a reason. It's the ego does its job for a reason. It's our parents teach us things for a reason. And just recognizing and acknowledging your work is all about starting with the values, and you work with different families. And like I imagine you go into each scenario thinking about what are your true values, and maybe not the values that you were told are important that you have to like pass on to to your children or have in your home, but truly like, what is that process like when you're with a new client, with a new family, and how do you get, there's like the 5 whys, like peeling back layers of the onion to really get to like what matters. What's that process where you kind of like remove a lot of the facade or the veneer and get to like what their real values are? Because I imagine there are scenarios in which they'll say what their values are, but the values are actually really different. Do you run into that?
I think that we have a look at that again and again and again in our work together. So when families work with me, they step into a 3-month container, and we're working together for 3 months. And in that time, we're constantly looking at how their values can inform their decision making, their responses, um, and if they're aligned or not. Right? Alignment is key. But we start, I mean, when a family decides, yeah, we want to do this work, let's go, right? Then I'm with them and I'm committed to them and they're committed to the process for 3 months. And the very first thing that happens before our first session, official session, is they get a really lengthy intake questionnaire. And they're supposed to sit either separately or together and both answer all of the questions. And really, they're just all helping. All of the questions are designed to help them understand better and hone in on their values. So that's where we begin. And then I think it's one of my jobs as their coach in the following 3 months is to keep bringing them back there, right? Keep bringing them back there. Well, I tried this and then this happened and it didn't work and I reacted that way. Okay. And what do you want? What's step back? What's the bigger learning here that you want to pass on? Because every interaction is an opportunity to teach one of those, to reinforce a value. So much so that your kiddos, when they ask you, well, why, if you set a boundary, it should come to you like that, because you're so clear how your value and your decision-making are tied together. So much so, I'll say that again, that your kids, my daughter, I remember it was 2nd grade. She started with a why and then said, oh, forget it, I know. And she listed my value. I can't remember what it was. But I thought,
wow,
boom, check. She's got it, right? Because the clarity was there. She told herself, in this house, we value this. And she went off pouting and then was over it in 5 minutes, right? So that's where we want to get, with that clarity, so that we are aligned. What we say, what we do. Not every time. I blow up. I mess up every day in my parenting.
We all do.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
But like you say, it's in the repair, whether it's demonstrating misalignment or like snapping. I snap. I've gotten better about it, but the repair. And when I learned about that, and you talked about the magic in repair, God, is that empowering and comforting, because we're not perfect. And that's not what our children need. If you're demonstrating perfect, I would imagine as a child, it could be so harmful, because then you're thinking this is success, or this is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I need to strive to be. But when you see a parent or parents go through something, whether it's an argument or disagreement or a parent snapping, it's how you address that. And I think I mentioned to you, when my husband and I have a disagreement, we're very civil about it. But I don't I talk to my kids about if they see like, oh, there's tension, and like, we talk about it diplomatically. We're very far from perfect, and we're in a very tough season of parenting with our kids being 4 and 5. But I want them to be aware. Like, I don't want them to think that. I don't want them to hear voices behind closed doors and not know. Like, I want them to see that we are both. Our wish is for positive or constructive resolution. And that's between two parents, but certainly with me, because I am primarily a mother, that's my main job. Before my coaching work is apologizing and explaining and letting them know. Like, I think my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter last week pointed out, like, Mom, you yelled at me. And we had already talked about it, but she broached it again the next day. And I let her know, like, Kira, I want you to know, every time I yell, even if you did something and I asked you not to do something and maybe we had a disagreement, if I yell, that's not because of you. It's not because of you. If you did something and I didn't, I asked you not to, or, we had a disagreement, we talk about it. But if I yell, that's because I'm going through something and I'm having big feelings, because the burden that a child can assume. And I've read that, like, I think, I feel like I've talked about him on like past 3 podcasts, but Gabor Mate talks about how babies, like infants, if they see mom in a bad mood, going through something, experiencing sadness, the baby just thinks it's because of them. I don't know how, I think it lasts like into like pre-toddler years, but I mean, that burden, like the burden of a child just assuming that anything bad that's happening is because of them. I mean, it breaks my heart. And so I try to, I hope I don't over articulate or over bring it up, but when I bring it up with my kids, I want them to know that it's like, they're not the only ones with big feelings. We have them too.
Yes. They need to know that. Like I was mistakenly doing when my little one was having a hard time and big feelings, as I alluded to earlier, as a toddler. I was so quickly rushing her back to the good feelings.
Yeah.
Because of my unconscious, jogging back to when I was her age and felt so alone in it, and stuck in those not good feelings. So I was rushing her back. But really, what our kids need is for us as parents to allow them to have the uncomfortable feelings and to sit right next to them in it, right? And hold their hand. So that the messaging is, this is normal. It's part of life, right? I have them too, as you say. So there's a lot of apologizing that happens in my home too, and hopefully in self-reflective parenting all over the world. It's a key component, because otherwise our kiddos don't know, they don't have an example of what to do when they make a mistake, or they need to own their part, right? Even setting boundaries, like you said, having conflict in front of them where you can say, I think we're disagreeing here, honey, to a partner if you have one. Feeling a little agitated. Let's come back to this when I'm calmer. Like, that's a boundary, right?
Yeah.
And so kiddos are just watching. They watch even when they're not looking. They are paying such close attention. And so the onus is on us to behave in a way that we want them to grow up knowing is healthy.
It's wild. The stuff that my daughter brings up that I didn't even know she noticed or remembered or saw. I mean, my son is less vocal in that respect, but I know he's observing just as much. And so she's a good reminder that he's just as present and available for the stuff that's happening around him. But, so we were talking about sorries last week, and I've been thinking so much about that because while we are parents who apologize to our children, I think the flip side is like, as moms to daughters who don't want to raise the like uber apologizer, it's such a tricky balance. And I was telling a friend about our conversation about like, let's swap the sorry with excuse me. And that was such a great lesson that I picked up in our conversation just last week, because I'm like, oh, honey, yeah, like I told you, Kira's in a major sorry phase. I'm like, honey, like I so expressed to her the importance of the word sorry and the meaning that it holds when you say it once and you really mean it, and then you move on. That's probably a whole different conversation, because it's like the girls and, women, like I'm a recovering apologizer. So it's interesting for them, the importance of them seeing like the correct apology, not honestly, the apology the way it's meant to be used versus like flooding a situation with apologies. I
And
imagine
even
it's a
the
real
ability
balance.
to accept an apology, right?
Yeah.
When someone apologizes to you, for your girl to learn to say thank you and
Yeah.
receive it
Yes.
and receive it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so true. I'm curious. This is jumping a little bit, but because you've lived abroad in numerous countries, I'm curious if experiencing society and communities and families in other countries has kind of formed your philosophy when it comes to parenting. I don't know if you have clients primarily in the US or if you work with people outside of the US, but just because there are such significant cultural nuances, across the continent to continent, country to country, is there anything that you picked up or witnessed or learned abroad that you pull into your practice or your own parenting approach?
Mm, that's an interesting question.
And no pressure if it's like not off the top of your head. I'm just curious if there's
No,
anything.
I think in general, yeah, I mean, all cultures are so different in
Yeah.
how um, their, their relational tendencies and habits look. I
Yeah.
think that what I gleaned and sort of um, like much like you said earlier, was relieved to see and it was reassuring to see all around the world was that I wasn't crazy. There's drag that happens.
There she is.
Um,
Security alert.
right. Um, that I wasn't crazy. That actually, acceptance, forgiveness, warmth, um, closeness can look so many different ways, but that it was supposed to be a part of family, right? And I coming out of my childhood, I was just so confused because I didn't, I knew I was loved, right? But I didn't feel that. And so I think it just reinforced for me my commitment to figuring out um, all the ways that could look. Not all, I haven't figured out all, but to be aware of all the different, there are so many different kinds of ways it can look, and also how to prioritize that. That to me is what family represents. Like connection is number one. um, I figured out my own values basically from being this observer, this highly sensitive, keen observer all over the world. Oh, I want a home. It was sort of like a pre-design before having my own children. I want a home where everyone feels really safe and they don't need to brush their hair before coming into the family room or else they'll get teased. They can just be. That person can be their person. This person can be a little goofy in their own way. There doesn't need to be a filter. There doesn't need to be anything that's performative because everything is accepted. You just get to be who you are. And what matters is spending time together, not the things that are exchanged or these such things, but it's really about experience. It's about connection. And so this I took to heart, and it heartened me forward to study education deeply, to work with children, to work with families, to work with parents the way that I do.
It's really interesting because I was raised in an immigrant household. So my parents came from, they're Russian born in South America, or born and raised in South America. It's complicated, but and I grew up in San Francisco, and so I had this interesting juxtaposition of like assimilating outside of the home, but inside the home, very Russian, like very Russian American, like only spoke Russian until I started kindergarten. I went to an American kindergarten not knowing English.
Oh,
But it
wow.
was interesting. It's because, this is a total aside, but my best friend was, her family had been here for generations and generations. But I remember bonding quite a bit with Chinese American kids because it was a lot of it was cultural parallels. Like they had Chinese school on Tuesdays and Thursdays and
Yeah.
Saturdays, and I had Russian school. But also like we, um, we kind of live tribally. Like my culture is very like, there's grandparents and like we often live together. And, but honestly, like it's funny as I think about, and we don't have that today. I mean, like my nuclear family is 4 people, like 2 children, two parents. Um, and, So I'm actually, I haven't really thought about that, but just having asked you the question, I'm wondering like how much was like the generational sort of like reinforced or compounded values that were passed on, and kind of that conditioning that I just like, had so firmly like within me. I wonder how much that may have influenced that, because it's like, it's not just your parents telling you this is how it's done, but you've got like a layer of grandparents. And like, I knew my great grandparents. But certain things were just like very ingrained on I don't want to say deeper level, but I wonder if that played a role. But that was also very specific because they had a very specific journey getting here to America, and the things that came away with. Like I thought that I was the only person who had ever been told education's the only thing that no one can ever take away from you. And then like I was reading, it was actually, she's also a coach. I don't know her personally, but I was reading about her, and her family, she comes from an immigrant family as well, but that was taught to her. I'm like, oh, okay, not special, not special, but I get it. And then I wonder, like, I've always thought of it as a virtue,
Mm.
but that doesn't necessarily like, and I love my educational background, and I loved school, but then it made me wonder, like, I just always took that for granted. But then it's like, I don't like to maybe ascend to the next level of like my own, you know, just my own development. Maybe it's not a degree program, so that's a total aside, but I was just curious how like different cultural plays. It's at the end of the day, it's like, I think one thing that we could probably glean from other cultures is that connection, because America is one of the, I mean, it's unique in that we don't have that really like established sense of community, like the blue zones that Dan Bittner talks about. It's like these people live it just completely embedded in community. It's like it's like the mothers, like in a lot of Latin American countries, like the mother's supported when she has the children. It's like they're, aunties and grandmas. And so you have that. And I mean, I don't think that maybe there's crossover or overlap, but I actually think that's very different than like coming to approaching your parenting role with a focus on connection and authenticity. Because like you do that, whatever the format is, whatever the format looks like, whether it's like just a simple nuclear family, like a single parent, or like a massive, multi-generational home. Maybe in a multi-generational home, it's harder to shed some of those old paradigms, or harder to shake them upside down.
I've heard from clients that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet I
Yeah.
envy that whole idea of having, another generation living under my roof. What a dream to me that would be. And
Same.
yet I've worked a lot of my past decade and being a parent on, breaking generational trauma and actually, taking a pivot for my entire legacy, right? And
Yeah.
changing the way. So all that to say, it looks different in every family, it looks different in every culture, it looks different in every home. However, what I took from it was the possibility of authenticity and comfort and safety in a family
Yeah.
and acceptance, right?
Yeah.
And that just takes back to the self-awareness piece, so much humility on parents' part, so much self-reflection, right? What am I bringing to this conversation? Oh, I have things I haven't even noticed way back there in my brain that I'm bringing and putting on my child in this conversation. That's not fair,
Yeah.
right? They each come to this planet to be on their own path, to have their own journey. And it's really our job to get out of the way of
Yes.
all of our stories and all of our programming, as you say, and all of our stuff, and let them lead
Yeah.
and follow. Of course, we're guiding, we're setting up the guardrails, we're leading in ways that they don't know how yet, but really having a curious mindset, a supportive, curious, how can I get to know you and you're becoming
Yeah.
and stand here and cheer you on and support you,
Yeah.
right? Getting the heck out of their way, as I always say, and prioritizing the connection, letting them lead. That's
You
a
talk
total flip.
completely different. You talk about asking them questions. Like someone told me several years ago, she said, your children, and I think I may have shared this with you already, but she said, your children will be your greatest teachers. And boy, are they. I mean, they're seriously what had to happen to me. And I'm not saying everybody should have a parent, should be a parent, have children, but they're the catalyst that I needed in my life to start to become the version of myself that I want to be. That was it. I mean, I think it could be, certainly other like major shocks in life, shocks to the system. But someone told me that, and literally to this day, they are my greatest teachers on so many levels. And it's funny because before having my kids, it's like I didn't realize just how wise they are, and I just see how tuned in, how strong their instincts are, and how spot on their instincts are. I mean, it is crazy. Or I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about releasing like this major control aspect within my character, and like having to be in control and be, and as a result, be under control because I'm not like
Yeah.
letting loose. And I said to him, like, you know what? If I know I'm like stressing about the laundry that needs to be folded or the schedule or whatever is giving me that sense of overwhelm,
Mhm.
I stop and I grab like I like cuddle with my kid, or like I smell my son, or like I tickle him, and I enter their world, and it instantly brings me present. Like instantly, it's like it snaps me right out of this like it's almost like I want to say prison, but it's like
That's right.
it's like, okay, snap me out of this. And all I need to do is just like engage with them energetically and like engage in the play. And it doesn't take much. It takes like a minute, 30 seconds just to like cuddle and smell and hug and just like, it's just such a good reminder of like what the fuck this is all about, which is being here, being in the moment, connection and love. And it's not about the dishes or the laundry, stuff that isn't important and stuff that will get done when it gets done. And that is probably the most profound way that they have taught me it, just by bringing me back into my body
Mm.
and being present.
Well, these little wise little ones, they're gurus, I call them. They
Oh,
live in
yeah.
the present.
Yeah.
So if you want to come back to yourself, come back to the here and now, yeah, tune into them.
Yeah.
And or also practice on your own, feeling your feet on the ground, just those five senses. What do I
Yes.
see? What do I hear? What do I smell? Right. And again, these practices are 30 seconds at best, but doing them together is even a beautiful way to bring this value and this idea, not the idea, to bring your whole family more high quality presence. Take a spin around the block, can be 5 minutes, and just everyone lists something from their senses, all come back together, right? And that practice of racing through the day and pausing, the practice of the pause to notice, what am I feeling right now? Oh, I'm thirsty. I didn't even slow down enough to notice. I'm thirsty. I'm going to have a glass of water. And even saying that out loud in front of your little ones, and they might think it's funny at first. Mom's talking to herself, or she's saying what's happening in her brain out loud. But this kind of modeling is really powerful. So it goes both ways. Yes, they are our teachers, our number one teachers, our gurus, so, so wise. And it's also our job to practice on our own too, right? Because if we practice in the calm moments where we're not completely dysregulated, coming back into the present again and again, then when we are dysregulated, we'll have sort of trained that neural pathway, and we can find our way back more easily, more quickly, right?
I was just going to mention that because I learned from your mastermind these amazing mindfulness and presence exercises that we can employ when we're not triggered, when we're not in a moment of conflict or frustration. And I urge the audience to listen to this mastermind and just go through it, because like Jenn goes into so much detail, but that was profound for me. And you gave a long list of examples of how we can do that, how we can tune into our bodies and instantly, in just a matter of a minute or less or more, if we choose to really build and reinforce those neural pathways that equip us to handle the meltdowns in a different way. And so that was a gift to me. That was new information to me. And so now it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to I might even create a reminder in my calendar, Jenn, seriously, assuming I'm not triggered or in the middle of some situation with my children, to stand and focus on my 2 feet, maybe on earth, versus my carpeted floor or whatever, or take that, the physiological sigh and just get into my body and just remind myself of the power that I have anatomically and physiologically to support myself when things do get a little harder. And, there's a fight or there's a meltdown, there's a flopping situation. That was so helpful. So thank you for sharing that with everyone who listens to the mastermind and who hopefully will now. That was just such a potent to-do, a reminder of what we have available.
Right. Even the two most important, putting your hand on your heart, right? When you feel yourself starting to speed up and be triggered, right? Just coming back to that self-compassion. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm having a big feeling right now, right?
Yeah.
Can allow a pause or even just access to a second pause. And the feeling your 2 feet on the ground doesn't have to be take off your shoes and find uncarpeted. It can be while you're brushing your teeth in the grocery store line, washing dishes, any, and that's a 10-second, just feeling your 2 feet on the floor will bring you to the here and now. Then feeling the water while you're washing dishes over your hands, right? This continuous practice will allow you to be more present with your children. And that being said, we're talking about really deep stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it could, some listeners feel really hard work. However, one of the most fun ways to practice coming into the present moment is to practice lightness, right? So we do a lot of pranks in my house where we prank each other.
That's amazing.
Or, you do the tickle and the sniff. And there's all kinds of ways, something that'll just crack you up, or cranking a song, and having a dance. Oh yeah, we don't wait for April Fool's Day around here.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
It's put a little furry dog toy way up in my daughter's shoe so that she screams and thinks it was a mouse. And then she's doing something to me. And right, it just brings a little lightness to all of this, because that too just brings the lightness. Lightness brings you right into the here and now. Oh my gosh, we got each other, even if it's just for 20 seconds, right?
It's so funny that you say that. For some reason, my children got me. Maybe this makes me a shitty mom. They got me imitating each of them having a meltdown, and I did it in a really funny way, because my son kind of puffs his chest and he has long hair and he'll twirl his hair and it's funny, and he's like, "Mama, you be Benji, I be Mama." So I'll do a meltdown. I'll do his meltdown, and he does he made something up because it's not me, or maybe from the past, or but I'm like, okay, that's cool. You do mama, do your best mama. And they think it's so funny. So maybe it's, we poke fun, healthy, cute fun. And they love to tease daddy too, which it's always fun to tease daddy. But, so we do that. And I also like, in a way, I like that they can take it. They introduced it. Like I will never like, it was uncomfortable for me. And I was like, hey, honey, I don't want to, I don't want to just mock you guys anymore. Like I'll do it once and then let's move on. But it actually like gives me some peace that they like want that because they can like have fun with themselves. But anyways, like that's maybe like one dysfunctional way that we have levity, but they think it's hilarious, because it's like, it's exaggerated, certainly on my part.
Well, and as long as everyone thinks it's funny,
Yeah.
and you
Oh,
can
they think
check
it's
in, and
hilarious.
you'll know
Yeah.
when your daughter gets to an age where she might be feeling a little different about it. You're so attuned. You're going to know. Oh,
Yeah.
is this? I want to make sure this is still fun for everyone.
Yeah.
You'll do a
Yeah.
check-in. Right?
Yeah.
She says not really. Go, okay, we're done with that.
Yeah.
Let's do acting in another way. Have you guys heard of charades? You know what I mean? You'll pivot at that time.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I look forward to that.
um,
I want to move on
Yeah.
from this. Like, I don't, in the home, I mean, not in the conversation. Like, I don't want to make fun of you guys anymore.
You know what? There's something to it, Christina, because when I work with parents of toddlers, most especially, I often teach them to do what's called mirroring. So your toddler's having a big feeling and they don't have so many words and they don't really want your words. So one of the easiest and most impactful ways to let them feel seen and heard is to actually mirror what they're doing. So say your little one goes, "Arr!" You go right back at them. You get down on their eye level, "Arr!" And then they'll be like, what's happening? And then they'll go stomp their foot. And then you stomp their foot, your foot. And then they scream. And then you scream. And then one or two more. And they're going to be like, okay, I'm done. Let's go play mommy. Grab your hand and off they go.
Wow.
This works because you're saying, I'm with you. I talk about being present. I am totally with you. Yeah. And then, okay, you done? Let's go play. Right? It's that mirroring that is so powerful. So in a way, age appropriately, they're playing with that. They like seeing that you notice them and what it looks like for them, what it might look like it feels like for them when they're having big feelings. So it's okay.
That makes me feel better. Makes me feel less shitty.
Yeah.
Actually, another thing that you just made me think of is literally getting down, getting into their space, on their level. I think I actually picked this up from a parenting course. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's I can't remember, but it was literally about being physically on their level when they're when they're going through something. And I did this just yesterday. One of them was having a hard time and I sat on the floor. It was my daughter. I sat on the floor with her because I think that the visual that this course gave was like, imagine like this taller person looking down on you, maybe speaking sternly, whatever what's going on. Like that is really fucking scary. I get it. Like and actually there was a focus group in this particular lesson where like it was just all adults and one adult was kneeling and the other was standing. It's like that is like a scary giant. And so I think that has helped me. It's helped me feel connection. I mean, literally just getting down and, being like being the same height as them and, face to face and like the hugging and I feel the relief and comfort that it gives them.
Yes. I work with young teachers on this. I mean, you can't be walking around the room unless you're then sitting down next to their desk and you're getting down at the level when you're connecting. Then stand up and walk to the next one. Yeah. It's super important. And at home too, right? And we forget these simple little things that we can do to acknowledge how sensory our kids are. I mean, they come into this world all sensory, right? And then that hopefully slowly, diminishes as they become more and more outwardly interacting in the world developmentally, but they're still young and they're still very, very sensory. So we have to
Yeah.
be aware and get down on their level and watch the volume of our voice and the tone of our voice, right? And if they say they're scared, they're not making it up. They really are. So
Yeah.
then we have to check. And that hand on the heart thing can also just bring us back, wow, right? To
Yeah.
yourself. Because we can't really be fully compassionate with our children if and until we're compassionate with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So this is just a quick reset.
Yeah. It's really powerful, and it doesn't take much. We have what we need to go through some of these movements and practices to just reconnect and equip ourselves with what we could pull from when there's a tough moment. There, I did get a question from someone, knowing that this conversation was coming up, and um, so the amount of reparenting that I've done to myself is profound. And you talk about this, and I don't know if I've seen reparenting, but it's like I don't remember the exact phrase, but you say exactly that. Like, we're going through this process alongside our children. And so, and I think that's something I never would have expected prior to having these kids. And so someone asked, like, do you like, I don't know if there's a simple question answer to this, but do people have to do their own therapy or work before embarking on like parenting coaching work? Or can
Oh,
they dive in?
to do coaching work?
Well, no, I'm sorry, with you. So like to be a client, it's like, because like
Oh,
you and I, like you had gone through like your own process, and like I have my own journey, and but not everyone's done the talk therapy. Not everyone has to. But I mean, does someone have to kind of like be more in tune with themselves, or can they sort of like go into the process like where they are, maybe not having done the independent like, reflection or talk therapy or whatever the modality is?
hmm.
Do you
That's a
recommend that?
that's a beautiful question. And I think one that a lot of parents have, and some are scared to ask.
Yeah.
Um, no, there is no requirement.
Yeah.
To step into a container and have real support and how
Mm.
to bring more consciousness to your parenting. All you need is to be a parent, right, of a young one. I work with parents, kids age 3 to 11, to be a parent and to have an openness to looking at yourself, right?
Yeah.
To being self reflective, an openness and a willingness to bring more awareness, to take that arrow and look inward more than maybe you ever had. That's it. Those are the requirements.
Yeah.
And I'm really clear about that with people, because otherwise there's no point in working
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
If you've had some therapy or done some self work, great. It'll only be a boon to your family. However, it is not a prerequisite
Yeah.
whatsoever.
I imagine.
It's funny, a couple of families, actually a mom, I just closed with them. They're 3 months. And she, from our time together, decided to start therapy, right? And so they were considering doing another 3 months in a row. And she said, you know what I've realized is I want to do some personal therapy. And I think we'll
Mm.
come back in the spring and do another 3 months. It'll be even more interesting. I said, great. So sometimes that has actually happened a couple of times when I've closed out with the family, our 3 month time. Um, one of the parents has decided to continue the work more personally, but it
Yeah.
is not a prerequisite. No way. Anyone can do this.
Yeah.
Anyone can do this. Like you've said a number of times, it's really a bunch of little practices, but you have to have the openness and willingness to
Yeah.
try them.
Yeah.
And I say, don't ever believe what I say or what anyone says, right? There's so many methods and theories and pedagogy, and you have to try it. Try it,
Yeah.
see what works for you. Try it, see what's different between you and your child. Try it with your other child. And that's what's great about working together with a coach, because then you come back and you report, well, this worked and this didn't. And let's talk about this, right?
Well, I think that's what's beautiful about coaching work because your work is different than my work. But I tell people, like, it's not me, it's my clients doing the work. I'm there to support, to guide, as they need, but it's
Mhm.
really like time and time again, it is like the magic is coming from them. And that's my wish. That's my desire, is to help incite just my clients realizing the immense knowledge and wisdom they hold. And sometimes it's just literally saying something that maybe has been in your head, but saying it to another person, it just, it feels completely different. And all of a sudden it triggers something. It just, it triggers in a good way, something in your heart and your soul and your mind. And then you start acting on that, on a particular opportunity or whatever. And your work is because you have so much institutional knowledge and training and education around this, so you're actually also giving people tools, that are, I think, go deeper, because it's like you're training someone to help someone else. But really it's like it's helping people find that empowerment and like really the inherent wisdom and connection that they have, which is so beautiful. You're supporting their journey. And that was exactly, that's gonna be my question, was around like, I imagine like so many people come out of the experience and working with you thinking like, oh my God, I've just scratched the surface on my own stuff. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's been my own personal revelation as a parent is, wow, I can go deeper, and wow, like let's peel this away, and let's like undo this, and let's dig deeper there. And I think it's incredibly powerful and so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. I do too. I do too. And it is often the beginning for
Yeah.
many families. Back to what I mentioned earlier about trust and teaching our kiddos to really listen to and trust themselves. To your point, coaching is about a reset so that as parents and adults, human beings, you are tuning in to what you do already really know,
Yeah.
being able to hear it again, because we've been conditioned, as you say, and we're moving so fast, right? As grown-ups in today's world. How do we slow down, quiet enough to tune in to our knowing, to our instincts, to our gut, and trust that? Because again, our kids can't do it unless they see us doing it.
Yeah.
So that's my job, is to help guide people really back to themselves, if you will, right? And
100%.
then again and again. Yeah, it's really something. And an honor to witness. But as you say, it is their work. I mirror back, I reflect back, I wonder out loud, I ask hard questions. Um, I remind them of their values, right? And try to help guide them toward alignment, more alignment, so
Yeah.
that they're with themselves and they're with their children in a really authentic way.
It's You're this incredible catalyst for reconnection with ourselves and how we can then be present for our children in the most authentic way. And it's so powerful. I'm so inspired, Jen. I'm so
Likewise.
grateful to have had this conversation, to be able to share it. If you don't mind, I'd love for you to share, like, how can people get in touch with you? I mean, you work with families, and I know you're on the East Coast. Do you work with clients virtually?
Yeah, so I'm actually in Colorado.
Oh God! Oh my God! Well, I don't know why I thought there you
That's
go.
okay.
Yeah, I knew
You
Colorado.
knew,
We're
you
just
just
like a
practiced.
Boulder all over, like your website. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So virtual.
I yeah, I do all of my work, my coaching work online on Zoom. And I
Awesome.
think that it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
COVID, it's something COVID gave us.
Yeah.
And at first, some people weren't comfortable meeting on Zoom or even doing therapy on Zoom. But at this point, 2024, we're there. And, the tears can come, the connection can come. It is on Zoom and it works.
Yeah.
So, yes, to answer your question, I work with families across America, many in Canada,
Awesome.
and a few outside of North America, but I'm available to meet one-on-one is usually the
Yeah.
best way to be
Yeah.
sure we're a good fit. And you can
Yeah.
go to jennwert.com to book a free consult. It's
Amazing.
JNN, two N's, jennwert.com. And then you go to connect and book a time with me, and we'll see about working together. I would love to entertain any of your listeners
I think
and support them on their journey.
it's so great to know that this kind of support's out there, especially just because, I mean, I've heard of parent coaches, but like you're the first person with whom like there's so much alignment, just all the stuff that I think about on a daily basis. So thank you so much. And I'll include a link to your website and your Instagram in the show notes as well. But this
And the
has been
mastermind on how to manage big feelings.
yeah, exactly. That was so profound. It's like for listeners, this is just like it's like just shy of an hour. You're going to get so many amazing, like tactical takeaways, things you can implement literally today. It's worth the 56 minutes. Seriously, it's just a great session. Jenn is a joy. You're just like, this is like, you're the champion that I think a lot of families can really use because, there's no manual. There's no manual to this shit. It's like, we're figuring it out. We're trying to connect with our best judgment. I'm still in the process of connecting with my intuition, but again, it's just very validating and like, comforting to know that this kind of support's out there, especially like where philosophies and parenting styles are really in alignment. So